It's time for a little rebellion. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, lead, and inspire. You know, as a former American history teacher, I have somewhat pretty good understanding about the Founding Fathers. That was my specialty, American history, and then the era of the American Revolution was my particular focus that I wrote my paper on, of course. And, you know, one of the things that, we're experiencing right now is certainly a rebellion. We're seeing people march in the streets. We're seeing people in all over the country do that in numbers that are just tremendous. You know, right now as I record this on Saturday, I believe it's been 11 consecutive days where there have been demonstrations. Haven't seen anything like that in my lifetime since, well, the 1960s, as an example. And the point is rebellion something that is good for us? Well, I'm here to tell you that it is. And I'm going to use as my reference point a gentleman you may have heard of. His name is Thomas Jefferson. All right. Now, Thomas Jefferson, obviously the main author of the Declaration of Independence, one of the founding fathers, became the president in 1800. And his election was called the Revolution of 1800. Why? Because we went away from the Federalist era into the Democratic Republican era in our country. He was an agrarian, and yet he took steps that, as an example, the Louisiana Purchase certainly is out of the Federalist playbook. So, but the point is, when you achieve that office, you got to look at both sides, and he did. But I want to talk to you about his thoughts on rebellion. All right? So I'm going to quote here. Now, societies exist under three forms sufficiently distinguishable. Number one, without government. All right? And he said, and keep in mind, Thomas Jefferson's writing this as among our Indians. All right? So he's saying one form of government is not to have any government. Number two, under governments wherein the will of everyone has a just influence, as is the case in England in a slight degree, and in our states in a great one. So clearly, one of the points that Jefferson believed about the United States, about our government, is that we have a responsibility to speak up, to have our voices heard, to express our opinions, and so on. And then the third type of government, under governments of force, as is the case in all other monarchies and in most of the other republics. To have an idea of the curse of existence under these last, they must be seen. It's a government of wolves over sheep. Now, then he states, it's a problem not clear in my mind, Jefferson's mind, that the first condition is not the best. To not have any government, that's not a good thing. But I believe it to be inconsistent with it, and he goes on to explain, I believe it to be inconsistent with any great degree of population. The second state has a great deal of good in it. That's us. The mass of mankind under that enjoys a precious degree of liberty and happiness. It has its evils too, the principle of which is the turbulence to which it is subject. Turbulence, that's what he calls it. But weigh this against the oppressions of monarchy, and it becomes nothing. Even this evil is productive of good. It prevents the degeneracy of government and nourishes a general attention to the public affairs. I hold it that a little rebellion now and then is a good thing, and as necessary in the political world as storms in the physical world. Unsuccessful rebellions indeed generally establish the encroachments on the rights of the people which have produced them. An observation of this truth should render honest Republican governors so mild in their punishment of rebellions as not to discourage them too much. It's a medicine necessary for the sound health of government. When you have, and I unquote, when you have these types of demonstrations, these types of outbursts, it's a turning point. We are reaching a turning point. People spontaneously came out all over the country, in fact, all over the world. It's a turning point. People are saying, hey, I hear it, I'm listening, time to make changes. So, what are the changes that we have to make? Well, certainly in law enforcement, there have to be some changes there. And you can put down rules, but you can't sit there. I mean, how are we even aware of all these things now? Because we have the capability of videoing the act while it happens, you know. But there are plenty of times when when these types of things happen, and there are no cameras there. It's a whole mindset thing. It's a whole mindset thing. But you got to start someplace. So you start with rules, and then the mindset grows from there. Let's talk about the civil rights movement a little bit, because, you know, first, well, you know, black children can't go to this school. All right, Supreme Court said, that's not the case. So a rule was made. It wasn't very popular in the South where it was targeted. But what happened? And the same thing happened in Boston. So I'm not limiting it to Boston, you know, to the South. I mean, it's countrywide prejudice. But my point is, rules have to be made, and in certain places those rules are not going to be popular, but as they become more standard operating procedure, they become accepted, and then the mindset changes. So we need to have written rules where there's going to be a certain number of people that aren't going to like them, but as time goes along and they become standard operating procedure, that will change the greater mindset of the general populace. Does that make some sense? So we are at a turning point. Next time we get together, I want to talk about another kind of turning point that we're getting at, sort of a political turning point with our current president. And because we will never end a meeting on a philosophical note, let's all get out there, rebel a little bit, and charge! I'm Eli's dad.